Keanu Reeves sat quietly on a crowded subway, his hoodie and cap blending into the hum of everyday life. Nearby, a thief young man eyed an elderly woman, his smirk hinting at trouble. But what unfolded next, when Keanu took a stand, would leave the whole car speechless and touch a life in a way no one expected. Before we jump into this moving story, drop a comment with where you're watching from. If you enjoy heartfelt tales like this, subscribe. Another great one's coming your way tomorrow. Keanu Reeves sat on a crowded New York subway. Gray hoodie up, baseball cap low. Just another face in the mix. No cameras, no fans, just him soaking in the rare quiet. He'd been dodging the spotlight for weeks, and this ride was his break. The car was packed, tired commuters staring at phones, ignoring each other. Keanu kept his head down, eyes sharp, scanning the crowd out of habit. He liked it here. No one knew him. No one cared. That was the plan, anyway. The train jolted to a stop at 14th Street. Doors slid open, and new passengers shoved in. Among them, Dorothy Henderson, a 72-year-old black woman, stepped on, clutching a beat-up, overstuffed handbag like it was glued to her chest. She moved slow, looking for a seat. No one offered. The kid sprawled across two spots didn't budge. The woman scrolling her phone didn't look up. The suit with a briefcase kept typing. Dorothy's shoulders slumped, her eyes flicking around, hopeful then flat. Keanu felt a prick of irritation. He shifted, ready to stand. But then he saw him. A young guy slipped in right before the doors snapped shut. Gray hoodie, hands in his pockets, eyes darting like a hawk. Mid-20s, twitchy, the kind of vibe that screamed trouble. Keanu clocked him fast. Too restless, too eager. The guy didn't sit, just hovered near the pole, sizing up the car. His gaze locked on Dorothy, and Keanu's gut tightened. He knew that look, seen it too many times. The train lurched forward, and Dorothy grabbed the pole to steady herself, her bag bumping her side. The guy moved in, quick and slick, planting himself in her way. "Move it, Grandma!" he barked, loud and sharp, venom in every syllable. Dorothy froze, eyes wide, staring up at him. He smirked, stepping closer, his shoulder nudging hers, not hard, just enough to push her back. She stumbled, gripping the pole tighter, her knuckles whitening. A few passengers glanced over. The kid with headphones grinned. The woman with the phone kept scrolling. The suit didn't flinch. Keanu's jaw clenched, his fingers curling into a fist under his hoodie. He didn't move. Not yet. Just watched, pulse ticking up. Dorothy lowered her head, trying to slide past, but the guy blocked her again. "Where you going, huh?" he snapped, louder now, playing it up for the car. "You're slowing us all down." His voice cut through the rumble, sharp as a blade. Dorothy didn't answer, just hugged her bag closer, lips pressed tight. The guy laughed, short, nasty, and leaned in, his shadow falling over her. "What's the hurry, old lady? You got somewhere to be?" A couple of passengers smirked. One pulled out a phone, angling it subtle but obvious. Keanu's chest burned. He could feel it, the spark of something ugly lighting up. He wanted to stand, to shut it down, but he held back, eyes narrowing under his cap. Part of him hoped someone else would step up. 20 people in this car. Someone had to care, right? The kid with the headphones chuckled. The woman scrolled faster. The suit flipped a page in his newspaper. Nothing. Keanu's fingers twitched, his breathing steady but heavy. He'd been here before. Seen people turn away. Let the world roll over someone weaker. He hated it then, hated it now. Dorothy tried again, edging around the guy, her steps small, cautious. He moved fast, cutting her off. "I said move, Grandma!" he sneered, shoving her harder this time. She staggered, her grip slipping on the pole, her bag swaying. A gasp slipped from her lips, soft, startled, and a few heads turned. The phone guy adjusted his aim. The kid laughed louder. Keanu's restraint cracked, heat flooding his veins. He could end this, right here, right now, but he stayed put, watching, testing the room. Surely someone would move. Anyone. No one did. The guy grinned wider, soaking in the silence like it was applause. "Look at this old hag," he said, turning to the crowd, his voice booming. "Dragging her whole damn life in this bag." He pointed at it, mocking, daring her to react. Dorothy's shoulders hunched, her eyes fixed on the floor, hands trembling as she clutched her stuff tighter. Keanu's pulse hammered in his ears. He didn't want to be the one, didn't want the eyes, the mess. But the air was thick, the tension coiling like a spring. He shifted, ready to stand, when the guy took it up a notch. "Move, you deaf or what?" he snapped, stepping in close, his shoulder slamming hers again. Dorothy stumbled back, catching herself on the pole, her breath hitching. Keanu's cap shadowed his eyes, but they were locked on the scene. Dark, steady, burning. He'd wanted peace, wanted to stay invisible. That was gone now. The car watched, waited, but did nothing. And Keanu knew he couldn't sit still much longer. Keanu Reeves sat rigid on the subway seat, his cap shadowing his eyes, his fists balled under his hoodie. The young guy in the gray hood had Dorothy Henderson pinned, figuratively for now, his smirk twisting wider with every jab. She'd tried to slip past him, her frail frame shrinking as she clutched the pole, but he wasn't letting up. "What's in this ugly bag, huh?" he taunted, loud and sharp, leaning into her space. "Rocks? Your whole damn house?" His voice bounced off the metal walls, slicing through the train's rumble. Dorothy flinched, her hands tightening on her overstuffed handbag, her lips trembling but silent. The guy laughed, a grating, hyena-like bark, and shoved her again, harder this time. Dorothy stumbled back, her shoulder banging the pole, a soft grunt escaping her throat. Her grip faltered, and the bag slipped, thudding to the grimy floor. Keanu's pulse spiked, his body lurching halfway off the seat before he caught himself. He sank back, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the scene. He wanted to move, every nerve screamed it, but he held still, testing the car. 20 people here. Someone had to step up. Right? Wrong? The kid with the headphones chuckled, a nervous edge to it, like he wasn't sure if it was funny or messed up. The woman scrolling her phone angled it higher, recording now, her face blank. The suit flipped his newspaper open wider, hiding behind it like a shield. A teenage girl near the door giggled, then covered her mouth, glancing around for approval. Most just stared, at the floor, their screens, anywhere but Dorothy. Keanu's chest burned, disgust curling in his gut. He'd seen this before. People watching, waiting for someone else to fix it. He hated it. Dorothy bent to grab her bag, her knees shaky, hands trembling as she reached. The guy swooped in fast, snatching it before she could touch it. "Oh, no you don't, Grandma," he crowed, holding it high like a trophy, dangling it just out of her reach. Dorothy straightened, her eyes wide, pleading. "Give it back," she said, her voice cracking, soft but desperate. "Please, that's mine." The guy grinned, shaking the bag in her face. "What's that? Speak up, old lady. Too late now. Should have moved faster." Keanu's fingers dug into his palms, his breathing shallow. He could end this, stand up, shut it down, but the weight of eyes held him back. He didn't want the stares, the phones, the chaos of being him. Not here, not now. He'd come for peace, not a fight. But Dorothy's voice, small, breaking, cut deeper than he expected. She reached for the bag, her thin arm trembling, and the guy yanked it away, laughing louder. "Where you think you're going, huh? You deaf or just dumb?" He swung it playfully, taunting her like a kid teasing a stray dog. The car reacted, or didn't. The kid with the headphones outright laughed now, bolder, egging it on. The woman recording zoomed in, her thumb steady on the screen. The teenage girl whispered to her friend, both giggling, phones out. A guy in a cheap jacket smirked, shaking his head like it was prime entertainment. The suit stayed buried in his paper. A woman near the back shifted, looking uncomfortable but didn't move. Keanu's blood boiled, his restraint fraying. He rose halfway again, his weight shifting forward, but stopped, sinking back. Come on, he thought. Someone, anyone, no one did. Dorothy reached again, her fingers brushing the bag's strap, and the guy shoved her hard. She slammed into the pole, her gasp sharp, her legs wobbling. "Give it back!" she cried, louder now, tears glinting in her eyes. The guy just laughed, holding it higher. "Oh, now you got a voice. Too bad, Grandma. Finders keepers." He spun to the crowd, arms out like a showman. "Look at this old hag, dragging her junk around, slowing us all down." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the car, but most stayed quiet, eyes averted. Keanu's restraint snapped. Not all the way, but close. He stood, then sat again, his heart hammering, his mind a tug of war. Act, and he'd lose the shadows he'd fought to keep. Wait, and this woman, this stranger, would break right in front of him. He'd seen enough pain in his life, carried enough of his own, to know what that look in her eyes meant. Fear. Helplessness. The kind that sticks with you. He couldn't unsee it, couldn't unfeel the weight pressing on his chest. But still, he waited, eyes darting to the crowd, begging them silently. Do something. The guy wasn't done. He dangled the bag closer, teasing, then yanked it back when Dorothy lunged. She stumbled forward, catching herself on the pole, her breath ragged. "Please," she whispered, barely audible, her hands shaking. The guy smirked, tossing the bag between his hands like a ball. "Please what? You gonna cry now? Go on, let's see it." The kid with the headphones whooped. The woman recording murmured, "Oh shit, this is wild." The teenage girls giggled harder, one snapping a pic. The suit coughed, flipping a page. The guy in the jacket muttered, "She should have stayed home." Keanu's breaking point loomed, his hands flexed, his cap shadowing the storm in his eyes. He didn't want this, didn't want to be the one. But Dorothy's pleas stabbed at him, each one a crack in his resolve. The thief's cruelty wasn't slowing. It was accelerating, feeding off the car's silence. Keanu leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his stare locked on the guy. He could wait one more second, one more chance for someone else to grow a spine. But deep down, he knew. No one was coming. The injustice was a live wire, sparking, and he was inches from grabbing it. Keanu Reeves couldn't sit still anymore. The subway car pulsed with tension. Dorothy Henderson's shaky pleas, "Please give it back," ringing in his ears, the thief's mocking laughter a hammer against his restraint. The guy dangled her bag high, tossing it hand to hand, grinning like a kid torturing a bug. The crowd watched, some giggling, some recording, most pretending it wasn't happening. Keanu's cap shadowed his eyes, but they burned, fixed on the scene. Enough was enough. He stood, slow and deliberate, his hoodie shifting as he straightened to his full height. The car didn't notice, not yet, but the air changed. "That's enough," he said, his voice low, cutting through the noise like a blade through cloth. The thief spun, bag still in hand, his sneer locked and loaded. "Who are you, old man?" he snapped, stepping forward, chin jutted out, sizing Keanu up. His eyes flicked over the hoodie, the cap, dismissing him, until Keanu reached up and pulled the hood back, letting it fall. His face came into view, sharp and unmistakable, the cap still low but not hiding who he was. The thief's grin froze, then cracked, his bravado leaking out fast. Recognition hit the car like a shockwave. The kid with the headphones choked. "No way." The woman recording gasped, her phone dipping. The teenage girls whispered, "Holy shit, that's him." The suit lowered his newspaper, eyes wide. The guy in the jacket muttered, "Keanu freaking Reeves?" Whispers rippled, phones shifted, but Keanu didn't flinch. His stare stayed on the thief, calm but lethal, a quiet storm rolling in. "Give it back," he said, each word a stone dropped in still water, rippling with weight. The thief blinked, clutching the bag tighter, trying to hold his ground. "You ain't serious, man," he muttered, voice shaky, glancing around for backup. The car was silent. No laughs, no smirks now, just eyes, locked on him, on Keanu. "I don't care who you are, bro, you ain't special," he said, forcing a laugh that died halfway out. Keanu took a step forward, his boots heavy on the floor, his gaze unrelenting. "Last chance," he said, his tone flat, cold, like a promise he didn't need to yell. "Put it down." The thief hesitated, his hands twitching, eyes darting to the crowd. The kid with the headphones looked away. The woman with the phone stopped recording, her thumb frozen. The teenage girls shrank back, phones down. No one had his back. Not anymore. All right, he said, raising one hand like a white flag, his voice high, cracking. "Chill, man. It's just a joke." He crouched, slow and stiff, setting the bag on the floor with a dull thud. "There, happy now." Sheesh. Keanu didn't move, his eyes drilling into the guy. "Apologize," he ordered, his voice steady, unyielding. The thief frowned, shifting on his heels. "Man, come on, Keanu cut him off, stepping closer, his shadow falling over him. "Apologize," he repeated, sharper now, a steel edge beneath the calm. The thief's face twisted, frustration bubbling up, but he looked around. No allies, no outs. He swallowed hard, turning to Dorothy, who stood clutching the pole, her bag at her feet, tears streaking her cheeks. "Sorry," he muttered, barely audible, staring at the floor. Keanu's jaw tightened. "Louder!" he snapped, his voice a whip crack. The thief flinched, throwing his hands up. "I said I'm sorry, all right," he barked, glaring at Dorothy, then away, his bravado a ghost now. Keanu nodded once, satisfied, then pointed at the floor. "Get down," he said, his tone final. The thief's eyes widened, panic flashing. "What?" Keanu didn't repeat himself, just stared, unblinking, his presence a wall he couldn't climb. The guy hesitated, glancing at the doors, calculating a run. Keanu shifted, cutting off the angle without moving much. Just enough. "Don't," he warned, low and deadly. The thief's shoulders slumped, his fight gone. Slowly he lowered himself, knees hitting the grimy floor, then stretched out face down, hands behind his head. Keanu stood over him, boots planted, his breathing even, his eyes never leaving the guy. The car was a statue gallery. Everyone frozen, staring, awestruck. "Call the police," Keanu said, his voice ringing out, breaking the silence. No one moved. He scanned the crowd, his gaze sharp. "Now!" he added louder, a command they couldn't ignore. The woman with the phone fumbled, dialing fast. The suit pulled his out, muttering, "Yeah, police, subway robbery." The teenage girls whispered, one tapping her screen. Multiple voices overlapped, shaky but quick, calling it in. Keanu nodded, turning back to the thief who lay still, breathing hard, face pressed to the dirt. Dorothy bent down, slow and careful, picking up her bag. Her hands shook as she pulled it close, hugging it like a lifeline. She looked up at Keanu, her eyes wet but steady, gratitude shining through the fear. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft, breaking on the words. Keanu met her gaze, his expression softening for a split second, a flicker of warmth under the steel. He nodded just once, then turned back to the thief, his focus snapping back into place. The car buzzed now, whispers, gasps, the hum of phones recording again. "That's Keanu Reeves," someone hissed. "He just took that guy down," another said, voice trembling with awe. The kid with the headphones gaped, "Dude, I can't believe this." The woman who'd recorded earlier murmured, "This is going viral." Keanu ignored it all, his attention locked on the guy at his feet, making sure he didn't twitch. The thief muttered something into the floor, curses maybe, but didn't move. Keanu's boots stayed planted, a silent promise. Try it, and you're done. The train slowed, brakes squealing, the intercom crackling. Grand Central Station. Keanu glanced at Dorothy again. She sat now, bag on her lap, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Her lips curved into a faint, shaky smile, and he nodded back, a quiet understanding passing between them. The doors hissed open, and heavy footsteps echoed. Police, 4 of them, storming in. "What's going on?" The lead officer barked, eyes scanning, landing on the guy on the floor. Keanu stepped back, pointing. "He tried to rob her," he said, nodding at Dorothy. "Shoved her, took her bag. I stopped him." The officer's gaze flicked to Keanu, recognition dawning, but he stayed professional, pulling cuffs. "On your feet!" he snapped at the thief, yanking him up. The guy protested, "I didn't do nothing!" But the cuffs clicked shut, final as a lock. Keanu watched, arms crossed, his job done, for now. The subway doors at Grand Central Station hissed shut behind the police as they dragged the thief out, his wrists cuffed, his protests, "I didn't do nothing," fading into the platform's din. Keanu Reeves stood near the edge of the car, arms crossed, his cap back low over his eyes. The air buzzed with a new energy. Passengers whispering, staring, phones still up, capturing the aftermath. Dorothy Henderson sat a few feet away, her bag hugged tight, her breathing steadying. She looked at Keanu, her eyes soft with something beyond words. "You didn't have to, but you did," she said quietly, her voice rough but warm. "Thank you." Keanu shrugged, a small tilt of his shoulder brushing it off. "Anyone should have," he muttered, his tone low, almost lost in the train's rumble as it pulled away. But the car didn't let it go. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" a teenage girl hissed, her phone trembling in her hand. "No way! He just took that guy down," the kid with the headphones said, eyes wide. The woman who'd recorded leaned to her friend. "This is blowing up already. Check TikTok." The suit folded his paper, staring openly now. The guy in the jacket pulled his phone out, muttering, "Gotta send this to my boys." Keanu felt the shift, the anonymity he'd clung to slipping away like sand through his fingers. He sat back down, head low, trying to sink into the seat, but the whispers grew louder. "That's him! John Wick in real life!" Dude, I knew he was badass. Phones clicked, flashed, recorded. The teenage girls giggled, one zooming in. The woman refreshed her screen. Holy shit, 1 million views already. Keanu's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping his knee. Faster now. He'd wanted peace. Not this. Not again. The train rolled on, but the buzz didn't fade. By the time he hit his stop, Southgate Station, his phone was buzzing too, a relentless hum in his pocket. He stepped onto the platform, head down, moving fast through the crowd. No one stopped him, not yet, but he felt the eyes, the whispers trailing him like smoke. At home, he locked the door, tossed his cap on the couch, and slumped into a chair. His phone wouldn't quit. He yanked it out, the screen lighting up with chaos, missed calls, texts, notifications piling up like an avalanche. His agent, "Keanu, call me ASAP, videos everywhere." His publicist, "We need a statement, this is huge." A friend, "Bro, you're trending, legend." News alerts stacked up, CNN, BBC, TMZ, Reeves stops subway robbery. Keanu Reeves, real-life hero. Hollywood star takes down thief. He scrolled, his stomach twisting. Headlines twisted it. Some called it a racist attack, others a daring rescue. None got it right. It wasn't about him. It was about Dorothy, about the car doing nothing. But the world didn't care about that. It wanted a story, a hero, a clip to share. Keanu rubbed his face, a groan slipping out. He'd seen this before. Fame chewing up truth, spitting out something shiny and fake. His phone buzzed again. His sister. "Proud of you, Kay. You did good." That one hit different, softer, but even that couldn't cut through the noise. He stood, pacing, the room closing in. The video was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, racking up millions of views. Comments flooded. "Keanu's the man. Real hero shit. John Wick vibes." He didn't want it, any of it. But it was too late. The world was watching, and it wouldn't stop. He stopped pacing, staring at his reflection in the window, the city lights blurring beyond. Dorothy's face flashed in his mind, her tears, her gratitude, her quiet strength. That's what mattered, not this circus. He grabbed his phone, opened the camera app, and hit record. No script, no polish, just him, raw and real. He held it up, his face filling the frame, eyes steady, jaw set. "By now you've seen the video," he started, his voice low, firm. "And I've seen the headlines. They're calling me a hero. I'm not." He leaned closer, his gaze piercing. "This isn't about me. It's about her, Dorothy Henderson, an elderly woman on a train, minding her own business, getting harassed, robbed, shoved around. And you know what's worse? No one did anything. They watched. They recorded. They laughed. That's the story, not me stepping in. It's what didn't happen till it was almost too late." His voice tightened, frustration seeping through. "Don't call me a hero. Ask yourself, what would you do? Would you help, or would you just watch?" He paused, letting it hang, then nodded once. "That's it." He ended the recording, uploaded it, no captions, no tags, just truth. Within minutes, it spread. Shares, retweets, comments pouring in. "He's right, we suck. I'd have helped, swear." This hits hard. Keanu tossed the phone on the table, exhaling slow. It wouldn't stop the hype. He knew that. But maybe it'd shift something. Even a little. He sank back into the chair, staring at the ceiling, Dorothy's voice echoing. "You didn't have to, but you did." His phone buzzed again, his agent probably, or another news alert. He ignored it, closing his eyes. The world could twist this however it wanted, but he'd said his piece. He didn't want the label, the spotlight, the hero bullshit. He'd acted because it was right. Not for them, not for fame, but for her. Still, the chaos gnawed at him. Fame distorting a moment into something it wasn't. He didn't know Dorothy's story, not really, but he felt it. Her weight, her worth. And that's what they were missing. Keanu opened his eyes, resolve settling in. This wasn't over. Not the way they thought. He'd done what he could on that train. But the aftermath? That was a fight he hadn't planned for. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to do. Days after the subway chaos, Keanu Reeves slipped into a Brooklyn community center. No cameras trailing him, no crowd in sight. He'd tracked down Dorothy Henderson, not for headlines, but because her quiet "thank you" wouldn't leave him. She sat across a chipped table, her patched handbag beside her, her gray scarf loose around her shoulders. She looked smaller here, fragile but steady, her eyes sharp with a life he didn't know yet. "Didn't expect to see you again," she said, her voice soft, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Keanu shrugged, cap low, hands in his pockets. "Had to make sure you were okay." Dorothy nodded, patting the bag. "I'm fine, thanks to you. Been through worse?" She paused, her fingers tracing the bag's worn edges. It's all I've got left of him." Keanu tilted his head, waiting. She sighed, eyes distant. "My husband, James. Passed 5 years back. These are his letters. Wrote 'em when he was overseas, before we married. I'm a retired nurse, widowed now, barely scraping by. This bag's my tether to him." Her voice cracked, but she held it together, a quiet strength shining through. Keanu's chest tightened. He knew loss, knew what it meant to hold on to scraps of someone gone. The world had turned him into a hero for a 5-minute standoff. But this was real. He leaned forward, voice low. "They're making it about me out there. It's not. It's about you." Dorothy blinked, confused. "Me?" He nodded. "Yeah, and I'm not letting it end with a viral clip." He'd already decided. No interviews, no late-night shows. Instead, he'd called his accountant, set something up. "I'm funding a scholarship," he said. Simple, no fanfare. "In your name, Dorothy Henderson. Training nurses from places like this, kids who can't pay for school. You've got purpose. More than that bag." Dorothy's eyes widened, tears spilling fast. She wiped them with a trembling hand, shaking her head. "Why? You don't even know me." "Because you deserve it," he said, firm but warm. "And I've got enough spotlight. I don't need more." She stared, then laughed, a soft, broken sound. "You gave me more than my bag back. You gave me purpose. James would have liked you." Keanu smiled, small and real, the first in days. Good. Keep his letters safe. Weeks later, the headlines faded. Reeves stops robbery, replaced by the next big thing. But in Brooklyn, Dorothy's scholarship took root, quietly, steadily, training nurses who'd never had a shot before. She spoke at the first class, her voice strong, her bag beside her, a symbol now. Keanu didn't show up. No one knew his part but her. He walked away that day, down a quiet street, unseen, the weight finally off his shoulders. Peace wasn't in the shadows anymore. It was in knowing she'd shine. Keanu didn't chase fame. He lit a spark for someone else. Dorothy's story wasn't about his moment. It was about her rising from it. Life throws injustice at you daily, bullies, silence, people looking away. Don't just watch it happen. Act. One choice can rewrite someone's ending, turn their ashes into valor. Keanu could have stayed quiet, kept his peace, but he didn't. You don't need a spotlight to make a difference, just the guts to move when no one else will. Next time you see wrong, ask yourself, will you stand or will you scroll?